Good evening, Alita.
Hi, John. Thanks for sending this survey.
Mhm.
It's very backlit, but I don't know what to do about it.
Um,
See me okay or not?
I can see you, but the background's kind of blending
Yeah,
in.
no, the background should be blurry, but I just want to not be blurry myself. Hold on,
Mhm.
I'm gonna do this for a second. Okay, that's better, I think, right?
Mhm. It's just it's just a little glare, but it's okay.
Yeah, that's just because it's all white outside
Mm,
and I have windows with no window treatments.
gotcha.
So
Yeah.
what is that line? No, I updated my computer operating system over the weekend and everything is weird since I did that.
Sometimes that happens with updates. My laptop started having glitches on my Mac computer when I updated it. So sometimes that happens where like if you update something, glitches can happen through the update.
I know they say that there are glitches because it's not updated, and then you update and there are glitches because it is updated. I've spent, I don't know, maybe 6 hours on the 5 hours on the phone with Apple and since last Monday. So hi, Robin. John, I just want to again say thank you for your help with the art show.
Mhm. I had a great time, so I'm glad I could offer my services and that it went over, perfect, I'd say.
So we're good. So we'll be looking forward to your participation, I hope, in October.
I
We
will
need
be
to
here to
also,
service, of course. Mhm.
yeah, we need to also set dates for sending out the flyer um, for the October show for both the show and for submissions.
Mhm.
Hey, Chelsea, you feeling better? Oh, you're muted, so you could just do a thumbs up. Depending on how many people are here, we often just unmute anyone anyway.
Got it.
Oh, there you go.
Yes. Hello. I'm doing all right. Had actually ended up being very briefly hospitalized, really unexpectedly. I thought I had a flu, but I ended up having a seizure. But
Oh
um,
no.
I'm fine now.
Oh, good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that must have been scary.
Yeah. I've had them before, but it's been a really long time, and that was never like the symptoms were very different this time, so it was a very confusing and just a little alarming. But I have been, I think, as everyone knows, like just run a little ragged and like trying to do so much and run down. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it makes sense, I guess, on some level. But
And the weather was very changeable. It was kind of chilly out there for the
Mhm.
art show, so up and down. And if you're not dressed right, you get cold, and that doesn't help.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, well, we need to give it a few minutes to make sure that people are here. Gail's running late, so I'm thinking of switching the order so that we have some kind of quorum if we're talking about restoring funding. And thanks for being here, Chelsea. You too, Robin, needless to say.
Welcome.
Okay, well, Peggy and Sahar are here right on time. That's good. So we have 4 people. So We have exactly 50%. No, we have a quorum here. Okay. All right, so then we might as well stick to the order. We'll just give it a couple more minutes and see if anyone else from the public shows up.
Okay. Do you want me to mute everybody or?
No, I think with just these people, it's fine.
Okay.
If it gets too rowdy and rambunctious, then you could mute everyone, but right now it's okay. And you could
Oh,
also
like the
unmute.
committee members to unmute them, right?
Yeah, you could unmute you could unmute everybody. There's someone, it seems, from the public, Twain Revel or Revel. You could unmute him too. Or her. No.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Okay, we're just giving it one more minute. And I appreciate everyone from the Arts Committee showing up on time. I know Gail's running late because of a meeting.
Addison has joined as well.
I saw. Hi, Addison. And we'll start with the restoring funding discussion as the agenda indicates. Well, maybe we should just get started now. Hi, everyone. You know who I am. I'm Alita Camp. I'm the chair of the Arts Committee. Thank you all for being here. We have a couple members of the public, so I'm glad you are here as well. I'd like to start, and everyone is unmuted. John, well, you could do your thing and then also just unmute everyone as long as, because there's just mostly the committee members. It's usually pretty non-contentious, so I don't object to having everyone unmuted. So John, why don't you go ahead, please?
Okay. Welcome all. If this is your first time joining us, you will notice that you're all currently unmuted, and everyone will remain unmuted throughout the meeting except for the, well, everyone's going to be unmuted unless, of course, it gets too rowdy potentially, but should be fine. As we go through the agenda, everyone will stay unmuted. Following the presentation, as we move through the agenda, the co-chairs will call on members of the public wishing to speak. You can participate by going to the icon on your device and pressing the raised hand button, not the wave or thumbs up, as those will disappear. Only press it once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go down a second time. If you're calling your phone currently, you can go and press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself. Be on lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once the co-chairs call on you. The chat is available for technical support only to help with Zoom software problems, not to ask questions of the co-chairs. They will not see the chat. If you are using an older version of Zoom, you'll need to go to the person section where you will find the raised hand feature there. Please do not raise your actual hand or wave at the screen because we may not be able to see you. Chat room with technical support.
Thank you, John. Okay, so I wanted to start with a discussion on restoring funding to arts and cultural organizations with programming and education, because the administration in Washington has drastically cut funding for all kinds of places. I know about two, which is the Joyce Theater and the Bronx Botanical Gardens. So I'd like to, I guess, begin a discussion on what, if anything, we could do about that, or how everyone feels about that. Anyone, members of the public, would be able to comment first if there is anyone who would like to comment. Okay, doesn't seem like there are any members of the public would like to comment. Anyone from the committee? You just jump right in. I think Chelsea is muted. You could unmute her, and Addison as well. John.
Thank you. So I guess there's a handful of ways I suppose we could approach this. We could be going to the source, the people who are cutting off the funding and trying to fight the battle from the inside. Then there's also, possibly helping these organizations find alternative means of funding. What are other funding sources? Do we have connections with philanthropists in the community? Within the Upper East Side, maybe who can contribute? And are there maybe any like strategic partnerships, people who are doing some of the same things that maybe, they or we could all join forces to kind of curb some of those costs while still having some of the same effects?
Yeah, those are all powerful ideas. There are just a lot of organizations, I think, that have lost federal funding and
Yeah.
all around the city. So it becomes really difficult to be able to do something like that. We're just not equipped for that. But I think those are good ideas, and the people with the money and the connections, I hope, are listening to you. Anyone else?
Maybe I was wondering if we can have a resolution around more funding, and that could go to our local elected officials. I'm just like throwing it out and want to hear your thoughts, because everyone has funding available. They have their budgets, and maybe they have a budget for art and culture. And we could request that, especially the ones that you have identified, if you want to, maybe we could have them, give more funding. So, like, the federal is gone, but like, or reduced, but the state and this, otherwise, maybe we could, like, I'm just saying, if the pool can be, kind of diversified, and the resources can be available. And once those elected officials, they do mention, then of course the botanical garden and all of those would reach out to them, and avail those grants.
Okay, so could you just, I guess, summarize the resolution that you have in mind, and then we could ask for a second?
Well,
I'm
can
yeah.
we make it a little more specific? I think it sounds a little too general right now.
Yeah, Peggy, do you want to help me with it? I'm so sorry. I'm like, yeah, I would love your help on it. Um, how would you put this together? Um,
Well, it seems like the more targeted we can get, the more likely we could get a result. I wouldn't just call for, more funding for, arts organizations. Um, do we have some idea, do we want it to be for visual arts, or what is it that we're talking about here specifically?
Um, I would actually say that it would be hard for us to do so this evening. Maybe this is something that, like, what Chelsea said, or maybe my idea. Maybe we do a little bit of homework on that if you really want to make an impact and help in this regard. Maybe even inviting botanical garden, like as you just mentioned, or like the other one, and asking them where the gap in the amount came, and like, or some budgets, or, and it could be an offhand conversation too, and then that, like, kind of having those two organizations, we can have a resolution, because otherwise it's very open-ended. What amount
Yeah,
are we saying?
yeah. I
Who are
think
we?
we
I mean, I
need
was
to
just giving an
know.
idea. I wasn't actually exactly giving the wordings for a resolution. I was just saying that, like, it could be at a state and a city level, funding that comes in, those kind of, public grants. But for that, I think we need to know what they need.
Peggy, what are you thinking?
Um, uh, I agree. It seems like we need to do a little more research on this to decide on what it is we're calling for. If we don't, we'll get nothing. It'll be ignored. Um, if we want to call for double the funding for uh, arts organizations in the city of New York, I mean, the more specific that we can get, the more likely that we'll have some sort of positive result.
Well,
And for
I
that,
agree
we
with you.
also need to know what the current budget, like what the current numbers are for art and culture with these different elected officials. So I feel like we don't have enough information to kind of really join the two and be helpful. So maybe inviting one of those, and they can come and speak of what what impact they've felt, and they could
Yeah.
ask and they could give us details of how we can help. So having them come as our guests at one of our committee meetings, or maybe having both the organization come as guests, and then we can have like some solid numbers, and those we can have as a resolution that goes to the elected officials. Because otherwise, we'll have to go to the elected officials and ask them, what do you have for
Yeah.
art? And yeah.
Yeah, I maybe Senator Serrano, who I guess is involved in the state budget with the arts, might be the ideal person to come talk to us. But it seems to me that would be the way to go.
That sounds such a great idea. Maybe we can have Senator Serrano's office or he himself be there. And we have these, like having all these players at our meeting, and they all, like, we have those that need the money and they talk about their need and where the gap is now forming. And then we have maybe representatives from all of these elected officials, especially from Senator Serrano's office, be present at that meeting. And that's where we form that resolution. We have some wordings kind of prepared beforehand, but then we can finalize at that point, and that resolution. And then the players, all of those representatives from the elected officials would be sitting there, and they can all hear the need and then play a
Yeah.
role. We just kind of put them together.
Yeah, that seems
Sure.
reasonable.
Those are good ideas. I think, though, that those organizations are not in our community district. And then there are many that are all over the city. I don't know the impact on museums, on music or dance schools, or on anything else individually to the extent of specific dollar amounts. So I'm thinking, and we could have Senator Serrano come to the next meeting. I don't know when we could get one, John. Maybe you and I could figure that out sooner rather than later. I'm just wondering, though, because the Senate is looking at the budget and why we might not want something to go to the federal government asking that they just restore the dollar amounts that they have cut, with the reasons that funding for arts and culture is so essential to a democracy.
Yeah. But I
That
still
sounds
think we need more information to
Well,
carve out a really powerful resolution.
Well, why not? Because they're discussing this bill right now, I think, in the Senate. Why not just send something that has anything in it that just goes there to be on the record as asking every senator in the country to restore the funding? I'm sure that Schumer and Gillibrand in New York, Democrats that they are, will not be in favor of this bill, but for all of the potential members of Congress that are, I just think maybe being on the record is not a bad idea, but it's not my decision. It's up to everybody. So whatever you guys think.
so. Leader, do you want to come up with? Sorry. So go ahead, Chelsea. Sorry. Oh, she
Oh,
needs to
you're
be
muted.
muted.
John, could you unmute Chelsea, please?
Sorry about that. My cat keeps meowing, so I keep muting myself. I guess a couple questions. First, I'm curious about if we have an idea about the size of the institution or organization, if that matters, because, obviously smaller institutions tend to rely more on federal funds and things like that. And then secondly, I'm curious if we have an idea any of the mayoral candidates that might also be interested in this, either maybe not them personally, but their campaigns or campaign managers.
That's a great point. I don't know where the mayoral candidates stand on anything. They did do a preservation forum, but that's a different issue, although it does connect to aesthetics and the value of community assets in that sense of civic engagement, but not directly related to the arts. There are large institutions and small ones. The Bronx Botanical Garden, I would imagine, has a much larger budget than the Joyce Theater, but they also do things like a lot of education programs.
True, yeah.
So the money goes into different areas. The Joyce may do some education, but not to the extent. We know the Frick does quite a lot of education. So
So do you want to just come up, Alida, with the resolution for, like, if you want to do it for the federal, like, I think you have it in mind is what I'm following, because I think you have the wordings that the budget be restored. Maybe that's what we're asking for. To, like, is
I
that
think
something we ask?
with
But do we even have a leverage at the
no, we have no
federal?
leverage, but we don't. And I make calls to senators at various points, whether they're ours or not. But they do, because their decisions have an enormous impact on the country. We don't vote for them, but they should be hearing from us because their decisions affect us. Peggy, did you want to say something?
Well, I think we really need to focus on the state funding. Federal government isn't going to pay any attention to us. I hate to say, but I do think if we're going to have a resolution, we must know what the status is. How much is the state cutting out funding for the arts? We don't know anything about it, right? I mean, for all we know, the state is increasing funding for the arts. Can't we find out some information before we go ahead and?
We could for the state. I'm just thinking about the federal. I know we won't have any impact. You don't have impact without a lot of different stuff standing behind you. But I think that maybe just being out there and saying something. I don't know how many places like us, community arts groups or committees or organizations like this on an elected or appointed level are there around the country. So maybe we catch someone's attention. I don't know. We could be pretty cynical about it. And I'm just differentiating between the federal on one hand and the state and the city governments on the other, because we do have the ability to call in elected officials on the state and the city level. And so I'm only raising the federal right now. We could have someone come for the state or the city because they're in the throes of this budget discussion in the Senate, having passed in the.
I'm just Googling right now and see if I can get any data about the state and the federal government. I don't see us wasting our time, but the state could actually provide funding if we give them.
I don't think they have the money to make up for what the federal government is taking out, especially because the federal government is also taking just general money and clawing back money that it's given to the city and to the state. So I don't know that the state could fully make up for it.
Peggy, when you're doing research, can you maybe even, and I can do this as well, I'm curious, like you said, how much money is being pulled? Very importantly, where is that money going?
Back to the federal government.
But I think
it's going in tax breaks, apparently, and tax cuts for people because they need a lot of money to make up for the increased amount or the decreased amount of revenue the federal government will be receiving when it gives the tax breaks that they have in mind.
Alida, do we have a history of ever writing or sending resolution to for federal agencies like Congress? And
I don't remember specifically. I don't know if you know, John, but I thought we had but maybe not. I don't know offhand.
Apologies, repeat your question. My apologies.
Whether we've had any resolutions going to Jerry Nadler, for instance, or a Congress member, or anyone else in the federal government.
In the past, we've had resolutions to his office. So yes.
Do you know offhand any of them, John?
I can look back, but I
But
can't
you
recall.
remember that some went to Nadler on behalf of the federal government?
The federal government? No, you're talking about our office, right?
I'm talking about resolutions going to Nadler's office
Yes, we've had
relating to actions by the federal government as opposed to just state or city.
I'm not aware that I can look back and see if we've had, but I know we've sent resolutions to Jerry Nadler's office in the past, but I don't believe it's in regards to that.
Okay, so then we could put a pause on this.
Can I read you something from the web?
Sure.
While there were initial proposed cuts to the New York State Council on the Arts in FY 2024-25 budget, the enacted budget for FY 2026 includes a 172 million allocation, a slight decrease from the previous years, but a significant increase from the governor's original proposal. The funding covers grants, capital project, and state operations, demonstrating a commitment to support the arts sector despite earlier budget concerns. So in other words, the budget is allocating slightly less than last year, but a lot more than the governor asked for.
Right. So basically, it sounds like it's the status quo and doesn't at all make up for any cuts by the federal government. But those are also cuts to specific entities. It might be to the New York State budget, and it might be, and definitely to the city budget, but they've cut money that would, like they've cut for science grants to universities and medical institutions, other science institutions. The cuts are targeted to specific organizations.
I'm reading something else that says, this is from the New York State Council on the Arts. Quote, we're pleased to share that the FY 2026 New York State budget has been finalized, and thanks to ongoing advocacy across the state, the arts have remained a clear priority. Well, it seems like there's not much we could do about the state budget this year. And I don't personally think there's anything we're going to accomplish at the federal level. I think they'll probably be cutting more when the Senate whips out its acts.
Well,
But I think that if we could get a better handle on what's going on, we could start advocating perhaps for the next year.
well, yeah, they do. They start the budget talks in January for this on the state level, and I guess they just concluded them. And the city, the fiscal year ends in June. I don't know when they deal with the city budget. It seems we spend a lot of time with money tilting at windmills, but we have someone from the public. John, could you unmute Thomas Sessa, please?
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you. I'm just listening to your conversation. There's one thing I did come across in my search: the National Endowment for the Arts. Should you want to pursue that? The current administration, put out a document stating that they are looking to cut the National Endowment of the Arts completely, and their current budget is $207 million. So there is some. I mean, I think there is possibly some merit to just advocating for, potentially with the resolution, to not have the National Endowment for the Arts cut, because the National Endowment for the Arts is a grant giving organization at the federal level to many smaller organizations. And so obviously, I'm sure our small voice might not necessarily move the needle, but many small voices, as we know, can be very helpful. So it's not necessarily, I don't think it's a bad idea.
Thank you. I'm just looking, John put something in the chat about, I don't think those are federal level, but let me see.
Yeah, it went from us.
Yeah.
Or maybe
One was from our
if
sanitation and
Well,
environment.
what if we
have,
sent
wait,
a
wait,
letter?
one second, Peggy, because looking
sorry.
at the agenda from the environment, and I'm sure Sahar could address this better than I could. I'm just reading. It is a discussion about how the US EPA's recent policy change could impact New York City's environmental efforts, and the resolution calls on local congressional leaders to reinstate funding cuts by the EPA and to continue funding life-saving DEP work. So there is something on, I need to get zoomed back. There is something relating. I'm sorry, Sahar, if I stepped on your toes with
No,
this.
no,
I
no.
know you knew better. And thank you, John. So we did have a resolution from April or March on federal funding cuts.
So shall I just say, if Alida, we want, we can use exactly the same word, like almost the same wordings that are there, this resolution for reinstating the funding cuts for, for the arts and the culture, and put that out and then send it over. I don't think there's any harm in sending it. Maybe it might be a, wasted effort, but as you mentioned, we try our level best and we send it forward. As Peggy is saying that at the state level, it seems like not too much of a difference has been done. And in the future, we can advocate for more. I mean, we can have pass a resolution for more funding, and that would impact the next year's, like the 2000, like in Jan, when the new cycle begins, we could have a resolution going in forward at that point. And then in the state budget, the amounts could be increased. But I feel like for the federal level, we could use similar wordings for what you want.
So, so the state, we have some time because they don't start budget negotiations again until January. So we could look at this and invite Senator Serrano and other people in the fall. But for now, are you proposing that resolution, Sahar?
I'm fine. Yeah, I feel like I agree with you that we can at least try our level best. I just wanted to make sure that, with this, with our committee, with our sanitation environment, we've done it, but we even had history before that. So I think now we do. So let's just do it. So I would literally use similar wordings, calling on local congressional leaders to reinstate any funding cuts for the arts. How shall we use it? The arts and the culture? How would you want to like really broaden it to encompass many? Which wordings would you want?
I don't know. I guess that's what, if you're proposing the resolution, you can propose that and then we could see if there's a second.
Okay, so I
Okay.
propose this. Yeah.
Okay. Is there a second? Anyone?
A second.
Committee? Okay, thank you. Thomas, did you have another comment? Your hand's
I
still.
was just gonna comment that I think a lot of times that our Congress people have a lot of lobbying that's happening for them, and so by putting a resolution forward like this towards at least our Congress people, it lets them know that these are the things that we care about in our community, and so we want them to focus on trying to fight and advocate for those line items to get restored. So, Sahara, I think your motion is a very good motion. I think if we want to be very specific and very direct, we can we can be very specific and say that we're advocating for it has not yet been cut, but that the National Endowment for the Arts is removed from consideration as a department which should be cut from the federal government and for its cost saving efforts. I would my suggestion would be to adjust it in that it's something to that effect and be very specific about calling out the National Endowment for the Arts so that our Congress people know this is a very specific department that we're advocating for.
I'm happy to add that if others agree.
Yeah, I second that. I've worked with so many organizations and just artists who have NEA funding. What's really great about it is it serves everyone, large and small, and it serves the tried and true. And it really also helps like bring new emerging artists and new creative thinkers into the artistic or art and culture landscape and ecosystem that otherwise might not be able to be there. And as we know right now, corporatism, and privatization like is king, and the people who have the cash and the capital already are the people who can, make the moves. And so being able to really focus on organizations that are doing work for, again, places like the Bronx Botanical Garden with all their education, as well as individual artists or smaller groups is, I think, really important.
So I think, yeah, go ahead.
I think if we're going to have a resolution, we need to explain in it why we're calling for this. And I think that we need to point out that this is arts are a major employer in New
Mhm.
York State. And the funding is critical to their ongoing work and the development of additional jobs in New York. I think that jobs issue has a lot of hold sway with elected officials.
Agreed.
That's a great point, Peggy. Thank you.
So there is clause, yeah.
Okay, so I will, well, let's see, is there anyone want to call the question unless you want to discuss this any longer? Does someone want to call the question? Peggy?
Yeah, call the
Second.
question.
Thank you, Peggy. Second, anyone? I don't think you could second.
Okay, yeah, it's my response. Yeah, I
Try.
can't, true. Is there anyone? Oh, Addison is there. He could.
Okay, good. So Addison, you did? Okay.
Or Robin is there. She could do, yeah.
Thank you. And you could unmute Addison too, John, please. Would anyone, is there anyone objecting to the resolution? You should raise your hand.
I have a question.
Robin?
No, this is not an objection, it's a question.
I know, I heard you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Who is this resolution directed to?
The Senate, I would say, but it's
The Senate of the United States?
or our senators, Gillibrand and Schumer. And they're the ones making the decisions. They're the ones voting, but I think it should actually go to everyone. But that's just my opinion. Sahar, your resolution was your idea. What do you suggest?
I feel like this, what we're discussing at the moment, is more for the federal level. So I don't know if you're saying everyone, Alida, then that would include state. I don't think this is.
No, I'm thinking every federal senator.
Oh, yes,
that's
absolutely, every federal.
So
Yeah, why
what-
not, everyone?
What exactly is the mechanism for getting this in front of the United States Senate?
John? Do you know how these are sent out to members of any legislative body? They're sent by email to the city people. What about?
We usually send it to our contact over at the respected local representative's office. From my knowledge, I'm not aware which exact, if it's sent to the entire body of the United States Senate, I might have to talk to Will and Kevin about that to clarify. So I'm
And
not aware.
Valerie, I would say.
Yes.
In the
Maybe this is
interest,
the
I'm
new-
sorry, in the interest of time, we know who the contacts are in New York State, the various Congress members and also the two senators. Why don't we, for starters, at least get it out to them and both Senate and Congress, because the budget proposal is going to end up going back to the House. So, I mean, where we're going to have influence, if we have influence, is in New York State's elected representatives. Then once we get it out to the elected officials from New York State, then we can spend time figuring out who the other, let's say, 48 senators are, or how we get a hold of them. And does that make sense? I mean,
Sure, we could do that, and it's a discussion I could have with John and anyone else in the office that would like to. So with a unanimous approval of the resolution, so just once again, are there any objections? If you object, raise your virtual hand.
So this basically is just saying don't cut funding? Is that the?
Don't cut funding. I'll look at what the Sanitation and Environmental Committee has done, as Sahar suggested, and also language about the NEA that Sahar accepted from Thomas Sessa from the public.
And I do like Peggy's idea that let's just maybe keep it localized to our ones only, just so that we do get it done.
We could do that first, and then
Yeah, if you want to
and
expand.
if the full board, I mean, depending on Valerie and Kevin and Will and John, we'll figure out the rest. But we should have this done for the full board vote next week. Thomas, could you unmute him, please, John?
Hi. I just while I was in you talk, some of the things you were saying about crafting a motion, I actually wrote the motion while we were sitting here. I'm happy to share it, but I don't think I have a means by which to do it because the chat is not enabled. So I don't know if that would be helpful. Maybe people, if they read it, maybe it would help.
You could you email it to John? Is that at info@cbs.com, cb8.com, John?
Or you can
Info
send
at
it in the,
CB8M.com.
Yeah, info@cb8m.com. If you
Sure.
do that now, Thomas, then Jonathan could post it in the chat.
Sorry, Tom, just clarifying, you can't use the chat in Zoom at all?
It would not allow me to actually hit send on it for some reason.
Oh, well, if you email it to John, then we could get it there.
It'll be coming in a moment.
Okay, but
um,
in the meantime, if we could send and then I'll have it to look at when
Yes.
I craft this, Thomas. Thank you.
Not a problem.
Let's
John, it should be coming through right now.
Send it to my email at Kraus.
I sent it at info. I'm sorry. I sent
It's
it
all
at
good.
info.
All
I
good.
apologize.
All good.
I'm sure do that right now. Sent. Forward it there. Just if you tell me where you're going to forward it, I'll forward it.
Kraus
One more time.
at cb8m.com. Kraus.
K-R-A-U. Oh, I got it. John Kraus.
Yes.
It should be coming momentarily. I just hit send on it.
by the way, Thomas, if you just put it in the chat and send it to John, he's the only one who will receive it. None of us will get it. But I just sent a hi to him and he did receive. So if you maybe at that point it wasn't going through, you can try again to write a resolution and he will receive it. John will receive it. Somehow it was working for me. Because the whole chat is like none of us can see your like messages, but John can, and then he can share it
Weird.
with.
It
But
wasn't
that's
working
okay.
before, but maybe it's working now.
Yeah.
It's
I'll
because
try it again.
there's a text limit on it. That's why.
Let's just send it as an email if that's okay.
I did send it
Okay,
as an
great.
email already.
Okay.
John should have. Hopefully, John, you should have it.
I
now.
did receive it, yes.
And John, Gail is here, so you could unmute her as well. I'm guessing Addison would like to stay muted since he keeps muting himself.
He is currently
Thank
on
you.
transit right now, just to clarify.
Oh, okay. Thanks for your comments, Thomas. Let's talk, while John is doing this, let's talk about the arts show, which I think was very successful from my point of view and the point of view of the other volunteers, from what I understand, and committee members, and also from John, who was there, and from the comments that I heard from the public. Nevertheless, there are always improvements to be made, and the results of the survey. I don't know if anyone had the ability to look at that. Oh, let's take a pause in that and just go back and look at this quickly. Wow, that was fast, Thomas. Okay, I'll look at this and when I'm working on the resolution. You have a copy, John. You could send that to me, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. Okay, so there were what is everyone, any comments? If any members of the public were at the art show and would like to comment on it, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, then committee members. And you were all at the art show. I know Chelsea was sick, so she wasn't, but for any of you with any comments, and thank you very, very much, everyone, for being there and for helping mark the spaces and set up and stay for the duration of the show to the extent possible, working with the artists and engaging members of the public. As usual, we have more signups, I think, than any place, so good work. Any comments? Okay, well, I saw the survey and most people were really happy. A majority of the people were very satisfied, which is good. There were some comments about the size of the tables and the amount of space. I, for one, don't see how we could give them any more than 6 feet because we do not have unlimited space and we have a lot of artists. Had the show been on Saturday, we had about 40% more, I think, artists intending to come or who had not said no than we had previously. We would have had to go up the middle of that space of the roadway on James Cagney Place. I don't really know how we could avoid it. We don't have another space. So that raises two issues. One, I don't think we can give them more than 6 feet of space. Does anyone disagree? And jump in with comments.
I agree with you, Alida. I don't think we can give them more. Um, the only thing that I felt and I heard from some people, which we never used because we didn't have so many people coming in on Sunday because of the weather change. Some of the artists, I had to like kind of tell them, hey, can you move your table back so that put your chair on the pavement so that you have more space, just enough to stand behind your table, because I said we have another central row of artists coming up. And that really made them very, like, they were all a little worried that, oh, really? There's another set of artists coming right here, right in front of us. Will there be enough space? So I think that that's just a point that we must kind of think for the future when we do have so many coming in. That central one might be tough in practicality to
And
manage, just because it would get very cramped and things
it's,
might fall since many of them have stuff that can break.
there would be, if they had a 2 foot wide table and 3 feet of space for themselves behind the table, there would be 10 feet of space with a center row of tables. Otherwise, I'm not sure what to do because we can't turn people down, from what I understand from Will, and we don't have any other space. So in order to have as many people as applied be in the show, we have to use a central row. We have to use as much of Rupert Park as we possibly can. I don't know if we could get other space that's outdoors. If there are no other nearby parks. There's the church that we used indoors for a craft show, but it's not outdoors, and I don't know how it would get attention. So I'm very interested if anyone has suggestions about space or how to fit everyone in. But in the meantime, I think 6 feet of space is the maximum. There were also comments about pre-assigning spaces, and they would like to have pre-assigned spaces, but I'm not really sure, again, how to do that. It would require plotting and planning. Not everyone shows up, even though they've committed. They don't always show up at the show, and it would be very difficult, I think, to manage. I'm not sure that everyone understands the kind of operation that we have here. Even though all of that information is contained in the confirmation letter. Not everyone reads the confirmation letter. Someone was taking up a lot of space, and when I asked her to please contain within 6 feet, she said, well, you never said that. And I said, yes, we did. It's in the confirmation letter, which she hadn't read, even though she signed it. So I'm not sure how many people read it, but the letter explains everything. So there were those two comments about the middle row potentially and 6 feet of space and pre-assigned spaces, but I don't think we could do any of that. We should wear our badges prominently. It was hard to do in the cold weather. Mine was kind of covered up by my coat. But we should do that so that they could identify us. And I know John brought a bunch of name tags that we could wear, and we should wear them. And there were a number of comments about identifying CB8 board members, but most people were really happy. There were a couple of complaints that they had no food, but what can we do?
Really?
We can't get anyone else other than Chick-fil-A, and especially to come in at the last minute. People complained that a couple of people that there were no portable toilets, but there is a bathroom right down the road. We don't have the ability, we don't have the funding, and I don't think anyone would like to be located near a portable toilet.
Lita, you can't please everyone.
I know.
And the bottom line is it was a show where whatever they sold, they reaped the benefit of that.
I
I
know.
think having a center aisle, even though they'll complain when they see it in operation, remember at the craft show, how much space was there between tables? It still worked and people were happy and they were still selling their wares. One thing that I think would be good is where we had the CB8 banner on Second Avenue. If we had another banner, one for the art show, maybe on Third, or I know in the past, Sahar, you recommended having some type of a stanchion, which would be stand up. Know how heavy that base would be, or if we'd be able to store it, in Rita's building. But I like that idea. I think that's something to also attract people in so they know what is happening. But one thing that I will add is I think this Sunday we had more steady traffic than in the past shows on Saturday where we'd get waves of people, then it would be kind of quiet and waves again. It seemed like constant people moving through, and I think that was terrific.
Yeah, it was nice. I think all the posting that was done, and thank you everyone who posted, makes a big difference because a number of artists got information about the show from the posting. So that's helpful. And I think people from the public, but more publicity is always good. Asking the artists to publicize. I do go into some places and give flyers, any buildings that have them. My building doesn't allow it, but any other buildings that might would be useful. Thomas, do you have a comment? John, if you could unmute him again, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Alita. Just a couple small comments. First, I'll just say that I think it was a wonderful event. My wife actually showed some of her art in it, so that was a wonderful opportunity for her to do that. She's not an artist by background, but it's something she'd wanted to do for a very long time. So I had an opportunity to help her do that. So that was wonderful. I will say that it was a little unclear that people could sell their art. I remember when I first saw it, it was a bit unclear that it was it came across almost as maybe it was just sort of a showing of the artists in the community in many ways so that was a little bit unclear. So maybe making that a bit more clear next time for those artists so that they know that it is opportunity for them to sell. Which actually brings me sort of to my next point, which was I think there's an opportunity to engage some of the younger folks. I have young kids. I know probably Community Board 8 probably doesn't have a lot of money to do a lot of these things, but I know my wife, when she was doing it, she put a couple of things out in front of her in front of her little area to try to get kids to get more interactive, like some like model magic and stuff. Very, very inexpensive opportunity, maybe just some paper and some crayons or chalk or things where kids could kind of have an opportunity to just be a little bit more interactive in an opportunity like this, so that maybe parents could shop and parents could look around and kids had sort of a space in which to kind of do some interactive, on the spot art or something like that. Very inexpensively with some chalk art or something like that. It probably with that center aisle, you'd probably have to designate it in one specific area or the other, because obviously, God forbid, a child would knock something off of somebody's table or something like that would be not a good situation. But just a thought.
Yeah, we did have a separate kids corner when kids exhibit, and then we've had sidewalk chalk, so that kids could come and draw. But we had a few kids who wanted to exhibit, and I guess they would have come on Saturday, but they didn't come on Sunday. That's usually up near 3rd Avenue.
Not about the exhibiting, actually. So I must have missed it. Kids corner. I'm sorry, I must have missed it.
No, but there wasn't one this time because they didn't show up. So when they've been there and there's a sign that says Kids Corner and there's chalk out there, it's a place for kids to see what other kids are doing and maybe to be inspired. It's kind of hard to have that in the middle of all of the adults,
Sure.
But the children, they had their own space and opportunity to do that. I'm wondering, based on what you said, if we should say show and sale or art sale. But I think your comment was the first time I'd heard something where people were not sure whether the artists were selling. We make it clear in some communication with the artists that there's no fee for showing and they can keep all of the profits, all of the money that they make. So that would seem to suggest to the artists that they are able to sell their stuff. And for the public, I don't know.
I did read that. So I was probably maybe one of the few people who did. I did read it on behalf of my wife.
Most people do.
I kind of submitted it on her behalf, and I did see that. So there was an implicit fact that people could sell, and you were saying that how community board is not responsible for the transactions and all that obviously necessary language. But it was still a little like, can you, should you, or is it okay? Like it was more like, hey, if it happens, we're not responsible for it. It felt more like that.
There's something that says you keep all of the money that you make.
Got it. And maybe I missed that line, but okay.
We've gone through a lot of different iterations of both the flyer and the letter that goes out. So it should be clear that that's what the purpose is. We conceived of this as a way to support the artists.
May I say something different? So I noticed that the show was heavily skewed to crafters. I was wondering, I'd like to see more painters in the show. And I'd love to see before the next show, we reach out to more organizations, New York League of Artists or whatever it is to see if we can get more painters in the show next time.
Okay, so would someone like to do some research and come up with organizations that we could solicit for help in terms of publicizing it, Chelsea? Great, thank you. That's a
And
good idea, Peggy.
the
No,
next
that's all.
the next show is in October, we decided.
Yeah, I think we have October 4th scheduled for the next show. Sahar, you could just jump in.
Yeah, I just wanted to actually speak about what Gail was mentioning about that banner. So I want to kind of, if I may, take it back to that. It's a standard stand-up banner, and it is collapsible. So kind of it becomes smaller, and you can literally take it as a bag and like then put it together, and it stands. And it is available at FedEx and different places, and you like maybe we can have a generic one saying art show, and that we can use each year and place it. And I think that would be very, like, that would attract more neighbors because they would know, oh, this is an art show happening. And we can have like something beautiful, like we have the flyer, so something simpler, obviously not so many words, but we can have that. So wanted to just answer that. And that is, I saw it recently. It's pretty like good to go even in like a windy situation, which we have encountered now twice. So that was one thing. The other thing I wanted to mention was about the center row for the artists. I was just thinking that I think maybe the ones that I heard more was like the ones that were more towards Second Avenue. So I'm just thinking that bike, the city bike, maybe one of those reasons, like they were feeling so apprehensive that there's going to be another lane coming up, and then the city bike is almost like till the middle, right? So I was just thinking for just till where the city bike is, we can maybe form that row of the middle row could be next to the city bikes, and then the rest after once the city bikes end, we can take it literally in the middle of that street and have 3 rows. Do you understand what I'm trying
Yeah,
to
I understand. So
kind
the
of go like
third row would start at the end of
yeah,
City Bikes.
that way
Yeah,
we have enough space, because I think on the top you're right, there was more space, but near the city bike I think they were feeling apprehensive that was going to come all over them.
Yeah, well, there were some problems with bikes, as in people riding their bike down during the middle of the show.
Oh,
Yeah, I asked someone not to do that and she just ignored me. Some other people kind of half rode, half walked their bikes down, but there is a resistance to accommodating anyway. I think my feelings on the way some people ride bikes has been pretty clear. And people shouldn't be at risk or be getting hurt, but that's another issue. But I understand what you're saying. The other thing is the middle row can't accommodate as many artists because there needs to be a way for people to get across from the north side to the south side. So I was spacing it as every 3 tables, there would be 2 feet or 3 feet of space in between. So it'd be 3 table space, 3 table space. So we lose for every 6 tables, we lose 1 table. So we're able to accommodate fewer. And so I was thinking, what do you guys think about having 2 different deadlines? Because the amount of artists who submitted this time far exceeded the amount of artists who submitted for last October's show. And I'm worried that if it expands like that again, we will not have any room to accommodate people. We can't use the sidewalks. We're limited to the middle and to the few tables in Rupert Park. So what do you think about only having 1 deadline? Because I think we had over 100 artists in the first deadline. We do lose some, but we had 185 artists submit.
Yeah, I think one firm deadline is enough.
We won't have as many artists as we had this time because only 105 or 110 submitted at all in the first go round. So I'm not sure which is the better, but maybe it's better to just have fewer and have room for everybody than to have more and not have enough room when we have to figure out where to place everyone. Thomas?
Yeah, well, why don't we just go with one firm deadline?
We could try it this time. Thomas?
So I believe Sahara had her hand raised for quite some time. I don't want to. I
No,
certainly
it's-
don't want to
No, you
usurp
get it
her.
right.
Please
You
go
get
ahead,
it-
Sahara. Yeah,
No,
please,
no, you
please.
get it right to go
Okay.
first.
No,
Because you're from the public.
Sahar,
Oh,
go ahead, and then we'll go back to
please,
Tom.
please let her go
Go ahead.
first.
All right, okay. Just wanted to say that for the deadline, I feel like why can't we know the maximum capacity of the park, of the Cagney Place and Rupert Park that we can accommodate? I feel like we should go with the number and not the number of times that we allow, like with the deadline. The reason why I'm saying it is like, as you mentioned in the first one, it was like 110 people who signed up. There's always going to be people who don't show up. This is a standard for any kind of projects where people are not paying, because anytime somebody pays, they show up because they don't want to waste their money. But anything that's free, you will always see people signing up just to get the place but not show up. And then it could be 30% not coming up, 40% not coming up, and then your numbers are really low. And when other people really want to come in, the other reason why I'm saying this is, as Thomas just mentioned, that he saw maybe our flyer up, if I'm not mistaken. That's what I understood. And his wife decided to kind of join this, and she was able to. And the flyer we always posted on the week off, right, or like a couple of weeks earlier, not way before, right? So I feel like we should allow a couple of these timings where people can join, because it's also the word of mouth and the excitement that builds up. But I think it should be the max number, because with everything there's always a max number, and that way we would know, like, even then if some people fall out, we still have enough.
The problem is that we can't turn people away if they apply and there's not a problem with their art, like a copyright issue or pornography. According to my recollection, my conversation with Will from years ago, is that we have to let them in. And so that's the problem, is that we can't set a figure of 170 or 180 artists and then cut off everyone who applies after that. We have to let them all in. And that's what I'm concerned about. We could do a bigger pitch in advance, but posting is so time consuming that
Yes,
I'm
it is.
hesitant to ask about flyers being posted twice. I probably spent 5 hours posting.
Me too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know Monica put in time doing that as well. So I don't want to have to do it twice or ask anybody to have to do it twice. So we could make a big quest about it and then see how many people apply. And if we don't get a lot, next time we'll know better and we'll figure something out about either more space or doing something else. But I'm really concerned that we'll have more people than we could accommodate because we have a finite amount of space. And when we did the craft show and asked people to come with 4-foot tables, there were a lot of complaints about the 4-foot tables. So I don't think, since there were complaints about 6 feet, I don't think we could just say 4 feet. I think we need to have 6 feet and just see how many people show up. 110, if we lose 20% or 30%, we'll still have almost 100 people or 80 people. And that's pretty good.
Well, I also want to add that if we just have one firm deadline, we're helping out the board office. It really makes a big difference. Easing their workload is very important, at least to me, and I'm sure to the rest of us, because there's so much work involved. So whatever we can do to assist the board office, I'm in favor of. So that's why, one of the reasons why I think one firm deadline is a good idea.
That's a good point. I'm thinking maybe it makes sense. I don't know if this would completely go backwards, but maybe it makes sense to send a save the date for the next art show to everybody and then do one submissions flyer deadline. And that's it. We could send a save the date at the end of July. And if the show is October 4th, we could send a save the date in mid-July, and then the board's closed in August. Have submissions by, I don't know, the beginning of the second week in September, maybe, which gives us time, will give us a week to evaluate, and then for the board office to send the letter, which should be prepped and ready to go as soon as our deadline for approving everybody is passed. Does that make sense to everyone? John, how do you feel about that?
I I can discuss to Will and notate this, and we'll get back to you on further updates if any changes are needed.
Okay, so the changes are suggestions about sending out a save the date email and also an email with only just one submission so that we don't get crazy.
I've noted all that, so.
Thank you, John. Okay, Thomas?
Thank you, Alita. I had just, I guess, a question which might lead to a suggestion. Is there a particular reason why we can't why there are no sponsors of the art show, and specifically some of the local businesses in the area that are arts focused that could have an opportunity in which to, again, do some of the interactive things? But I wanted to just ask you before I make the suggestion about it, of course.
It just hasn't been part of our focus to seek sponsors. We also don't have a lot of room, so having interactive by people not selling is actually one person who submitted and we had accepted was someone who was going to hand out postcards and be dressed in some kind of outfit that matches paintings or talk about art. And it was his own thing, but I guess he didn't show up, maybe because we switched it till Sunday.
I was thinking about, like, so there's up on, I believe it's on so it's on Third Avenue. There's the art studio. Again, I have young kids. I have a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 15-month-old, and I saw a lot of kids sort of pass through, and it didn't really feel like they stayed all that long, because I don't know, there was a lot of things for them to do, and even maybe there weren't maybe necessarily things that were of interest to them. And so I keep coming back to this idea, this interactive component of it. So it sort of bridges the gap of the full community. And so potentially maybe approaching something like a craft studio to do, and maybe if even it's a small price, or maybe, there's a table at one corner where, with a small canvas for like $10 or something like that. And maybe some portion of that proceeds gets donated to CB8, or I don't know how it would work properly. I'm sort of throwing an idea out there, but maybe sponsorship. Maybe they donate some portion of their, things for kids to paint or something like that, and it could be a part of it. But just an idea.
Well, it's an interesting idea. Maybe something we could explore is having a day of that, like a street fair, and just having organizations that do dance classes or make music or do pottery work that doesn't need to be fired, something like that, so that there is an interactive component. Otherwise, again, the genesis of this was to support artists, and I think, and the community, in having this third space. We were thinking more of adults because those are the primary shoppers. My kids are grown, but I understand the need to absorb children and the great interest in exposing them to art at a very young age. That's certainly what I did with my kids. So I understand all of that. I'm just not sure about the ability to do that at this particular art show, especially if we get a lot of artists. But we certainly could entertain, when I was last at the Botanical Gardens last week, they had, and I don't know if this was special to the day, but they their focus right now is a Van Gogh related exhibit. And they had, and it might have just been that one day, where they had canvases and little pots of watercolor or paint for people. And there were quite a lot of people around the Van Gogh thing painting the gardens. And so that's a really nice idea. Maybe if we had someone who would provide those little canvases and paint and people could walk around. I'm just concerned again about drawing a huge crowd at one place when we have very limited space. But depending on the committee's interest, doing something, if we could have like a craft day for kids, along with people exhibiting their art. Maybe we could have a special event for children. Maybe we
I'll
could
just say that if there's interest in doing that for the committee, I'd be happy as a member of the public to kind of help spearhead that or participate in it however I could.
Great.
So I raised my hand.
Excellent. Make sure John has your contact information.
I sent him an email, so John definitely has my email.
And he can give you my email address as well. So I think that might be interesting. Space is always useful, but maybe that's something you could do. One other comment was a few people, I think, raised the idea of having a craft show that's separate from the art show, which may relate to what you were saying, Peggy. We always get craft submissions. Our indoor show in February was more craft focused, less art focused, but we had art, we had craft. It was not a lot of foot traffic, so we decided to go, and it was difficult for the artists because our space has to be accessible. And again, we have limitations. We can't turn people down. We had access to the largest school gym in the city at Wagner Middle School, and thank you very much, Wagner. But it gets very crowded, and we don't draw the same amount of foot traffic. So that was something that we paused this year, seeing how two shows might make sense. But maybe we could advertise, if the committee is interested, one more as art and focus on art, and one more as crafts and try and focus on crafts to the extent possible. Sahar, Sahar, do you mind waiting for Chelsea and Robin, who haven't spoken so much? Chelsea, thank you, Sahar.
Yeah, a couple just different possibilities, not necessarily suggestions, just as it relates to space. And now thinking about maybe having sponsors and activities, you could do it possibly Coachella style and do it 2 days in a row, and have that way you can facilitate and have like maybe more space. Don't know if that's interesting or not. Also, in terms of the table size, there's the possibility of saying, hey, look, everyone gets the 4-foot table for free. If you want the 6-foot table, there could be like a slight donation, and then you can have that extra space. And then that money could be donated into the community aid board funds. There's a lot of different ways that you could structure it, but just throwing out some random ideas.
Yeah, I think there are limitations because we're a government agency on being able to charge for things like that. So I could go over those kinds of questions with Will, but thank you for raising it, creative thinker, all of you guys. Robin, thank you, Chelsea. Robin?
So I read I had time to read the survey results earlier, and overwhelmingly they were positive. There was, so my point is, I don't think we need to react to people who are saying, we need assigned spaces, or we waited. I don't think we should react to that.
We're not. I was mentioning it.
Yeah, no, or I waited online too long to be checked in, or
yeah,
I want a bigger I think we should do what we've been doing and not, yeah, everybody loved Chick-fil-A last time we did this. It was a great surprise to people. They loved it, but it didn't work out. And it didn't detract from the day. And I don't think we need to get sidelined by some of these negative comments.
We're not. And thank you, Robin. It's just, if there's a kernel of something that we could do better, then it's worth exploring. But you're right. I mean, we're not going to go and get another food vendor for Sunday if there's a rain date. We're not going to allow people 8-foot tables. We're not going to go around and asking, I don't know where we would even get more space, but we're doing the best that we can, which I actually think is really good. And you're right, and Gail is right as well. The vast majority of comments were very positive, and the comments that I heard were things like, well, it was a little windy. We didn't really sell much, but we were so happy to talk to the people near us, to engage with the other artists, and to engage with the people that were shopping or looking, that it was the interaction. And that's, I think, was really one of our goals, was not just to support artists financially, but also to build community, provide that kind of third space where people come together. Art is, and we talked about this at the joint meeting with the Education Committee on the value of arts education, is that art is not just aesthetic. It increases civic engagement. It increases interest in community. It does a lot of things beyond just provide people with something that's attractive to look at or listen to. And so in providing artists with a sense of community among artists, and providing them with a sense of community among people who come to go to the art show and browse or shop, is an enormous value. And it shouldn't be understated, because those were the comments that I was hearing more frequently than anything else when I went around throughout the day asking people how the show is going for them. So they seem to really enjoy it. And when I mentioned we were having another one in October, they all said, yes, I'll be there. So I think it's a very positive thing that we're doing. And again, I have to just the community among us, among the people on the committee that it builds by doing this and working on this, including John and the people from the board office and Valerie, who has been so supportive, and our elected officials. Senator Serrano came and he spent quite a lot of time there. I understand Alex Boris came, Julie Menon came at the end of the day. Yeah, some of them are running for election, but some of them come just because they like it. And Senator Serrano brought his family. And it was great to have him there and to see the value of this to the people in the government and the value of this to the people in the community. I'll stop there. Sahar?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of bring it back to like, a one-time deadline. I was just thinking that can we like kind of keep the deadline in such a way that it is like once we have posted our flyers, then the deadline, like that one deadline is given, so that maybe the next day, so that once we have posted all the flyers, and then like so we post maybe the flyers a little earlier, and then so that we have like 2 days later is the deadline, so that if anyone has seen the flyers, because I remember even last time when I was posting, there was this person who came to me, one of the artists, and she said, oh, give me a flyer and I'm an artist and I will now apply. So maybe we might, and like Thomas just mentioned that his wife did the same, so I think maybe having that element too.
So then the flyers would need to go up 4 weeks before the art show.
I mean, maybe that's the way we do it and people remember it, or we keep the deadline a little later and we put the flyers a little earlier so that we kind of match the thing. I don't know if it's practical. That I think you and John can decide, but I feel
I'd
like
be interested. Thank you, Sahar. It's an interesting suggestion. I'd like to know what everyone else thinks about it, because the problem with having submissions close to the show is that it rushes us, and in terms of making decisions, and the board office in terms of dealing with our responses, sending out the confirmation letter, compiling all of those results.
Then leave it.
And then also if the flyers, I mean, I mentioned this in an email. I posted flyers all down Lexington Avenue, and when I went back to correct them that we were having a rain date, they were torn down. And there were some flyers where just the art show information was torn off the flyer. So I reposted them, which again took more time because they were torn down by Hunter, they were torn down in the low 80s, and they were torn down
wow.
station on 60th Street on both Lexington and 3rd. And so I don't understand that, but it would mean going back again and reposting. And you guys put a lot of time and effort into this. And I'm not sure what to do about that the flyers were torn down, because it's the only non-controversial thing this board does. And the flyers for street life about roadway dining or cannabis stores or liquor licenses, those were up on the same lamppost that the art show poster flyer was torn down. So I'm just not getting it. But I'd like to know what everyone else thinks about the timing. Peggy?
Yeah, I think a more targeted outreach other than flyers. I mean, we can do flyers, but much more social media, actually bringing the flyers to the art schools, getting them to post it or distribute it among their students. As I said, I really would like to see a lot more painters in the show. And so a different kind of outreach might be a good idea. This way, we still don't have to do, double deadlines, but do a different way of the first distribution.
It worked with Marymount. I have trouble, and maybe someone else has suggestions about just reaching blindly out to organizations and asking them. We need contacts. We had one at Hunter. I don't know that we have one there, but maybe the board office does. Do you?
But I'm talking about the Art Students League.
I know that, but I had no traction with the why, asking them even to hold our flyers or post them. I couldn't get a name of somebody. Maybe someone else would have better luck. But if you I tried to engage the Guggenheim with our show, and I spoke to someone when I was buying a ticket who said, right here, and I did, and I never even got a response. So I'm not sure that not having a contact will be able to do that. Maybe they're generous and maybe they want to reach their students. So we could certainly try, and Chelsea said that she'll reach out and try and get contact information and the names of these entities. So if anyone else wants to participate in that, that's great. And I think we had people from Marymount at a number of our shows. In fact, they submitted for this show, but didn't come on Sunday, who were students there who I think must have heard about it through Marymount. So that you're right, and sending information, sending flyers to people who are taking art classes, whether it's at the Y or the Art Students League or Marymount or any place else, can have an enormous impact. So we could certainly and should certainly focus on that. I think
Plus more social media, I think.
social media. Well, we do ask the artists to post. We do post on our social media. We ask the board members to post, but maybe we should ask them to post flyer submissions as well. I even have my husband, who's at a law firm, send around the submission and the art show flyers to people so that we could get more. So if anyone has social media networks, let's use them if we can, but that's a good idea. Let's talk about the dates for a minute. If the art show is October 4th, when do we want, and if we're only doing one submission date, when do we want that to be? John, how long does it take? You send out, how long does it take to compile the submissions and from the deadline and send them to us for review?
I'm pulling up the baseline right now that we
Thank
usually
you.
follow for it. Apologies, 1 second. Are you asking when is our deadline based to when we send it to you, basically for the
Yes,
first
when
ballot of them?
there's art submission deadline and then you send it to us, how long between those two things, the submission deadline and when you compile all of the art, put it on the Google Drive and the form, how
So
long?
I mean, usually we compile it all together during that process. So during while we receive it, just to give some transparency, we receive artists as we take them in and organize them through that from beginning to end until the deadline.
And so how long after the deadline do you send it to us? The next day, after the weekend, 2 days, what?
Apologies, I'm checking right now.
Thank you.
From what it looks like, it's a week.
Okay.
It's a week.
So
So we usually send the email review. Let me confirm on that
Okay,
one
so
second.
it's 1 week for the board office. I'm just writing this down for the board office to send us submissions. Okay. And then we have what, like usually 4 or 5 days to go through the submissions. Is that enough time for everyone? 5 days, well, with a weekend?
Mhm.
Is that good? Okay. So let's say 5 days or with weekend in there.
I'm not sure how it was previously done, but it looks like from the last one when we did it, we received it on, for example, in the week 7, and then after that, the week later, email review form to committee members and committee review. That's what you're referring to, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yes, then
Okay.
yeah, it's a week
So
later.
that's about 2 weeks. And then I go over any inconsistencies where there are no's compared to yeses from everyone else. That takes, I don't know, a day of emails back and forth. So it's roughly 2 weeks. John, you've been sending out information that there is a gap of time between when they submit and when they'll hear from the office, right? So that they
That is correct. We have communications with them on when we receive updates on the response, of course, in the blind review process, done by the arts committee. So
Okay.
that's usually we
As
state
long as they know that there's a time gap, so there avoids disappointment. So Hari, your hand is up. Do you have a
Oh,
comment?
sorry. No. Oh,
We don't
sorry.
give an exact time. We
Yeah, that's okay.
inform them that we inform them that there's a period of such that we'll get back to them, of course, on any further updates.
Okay, so we have 2 weeks then of time that we have to have. So if the deadline, I mean, if the show is the 4th, when would the committee like to have artists submit by? I think we need at least a month in advance, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
I would think.
With the, Carl, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chelsea.
And I was going to say at least a month.
Yeah. Because I
So
was thinking of the Carl Schurz Park, and their art show. Just what is the timing? Is it 6 weeks? Seems more reasonable to me to get everything together.
They have a long lead time.
Do they?
They contact the artists from their mailing list way ahead of time, and it's a different setup. They
Sure.
get assigned spots and so forth, but there's a huge long
they vet, don't
time.
they? They approve and don't
Mhm.
approve certain artists, so they need to go over everything. We don't do that to the
Mhm.
same degree, so we don't need as much time. And especially if the board office is able to send a save the date, maybe at the end of June, John, if you can do that, so that people know that they're going to be submitting art. So August, well, where we could do, we could have a submission deadline of the Monday after Labor Day, which would be about
Mhm.
weeks in advance. What do you guys think?
I like
Mhm.
that. It gives artists a good like long weekend to be working on their submissions and looking at their work.
And it gives the
Mhm.
board time, it gives them a week, it gives us a week, and then there's still about 2 or 2.5 weeks before the show.
Mhm.
When the office has to field any questions. And it's after Labor Day, so for people who are away all of August, they'll be able to come back and do that. Do you guys agree? If you agree or disagree, raise your hand. John
No,
is.
I agree, but can I say that
Of course.
with the Culture's Gracie Square Art Show, you don't, if you've been in the show before, you don't have to submit for approval. It's the new people that have to be vetted. So I don't know if we want to do that or if everybody needs to be vetted all the time, or I don't know. Maybe we should discuss that. I mean, if they've already been in the show, do we need to revet them?
I was wondering that especially for the people who couldn't come on Sunday because of the rain and they had other plans or it was impractical. So for anyone who agree, and John, would that be possible? I don't know what kind of records the office keeps, but first we should ask you if it's possible to not have people who've already submitted and been approved just be approved for the next show. Now that will also, I guess, cut down the amount of people that we could have who are new because of potential. I mean, I don't know if that makes it better or not better because we have that space issue.
Well, the thing about the Gracie Square show, so what you do if you've been a participant in the past, you get re-invited. And so then you would say yes, no, and you'd be, please respond by, August, whatever we want to do. But it's just one back and forth, invitation and response. And then um, how many people you need to continue to attract. For example, we could have a much earlier when we could send out the invitation to existing participants and give them an earlier deadline than September for responding. And then we might get a good idea about just how many more people we want to invite after that. I mean, that's one way of doing it.
Well, we have to invite everybody. We don't send out.
Yeah, no, but I mean, you re-invite everyone who's already been in the show but give them an earlier deadline for responding because they don't need to be vetted. They would just be told to respond, but we could even send out the invitation in June or July and tell them to get back to us in 3 weeks or something and do it that way. Might save a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, I'm sure it would and with our time. So been in the show or just actually been there physically or just been confirmed for the show?
Whichever you think.
Because there's a big difference between people who were told yes, they could be in the show and then they don't reply to the.
Well, to make it easy, then just invite
The people.
anyone who's been approved before, but give them an earlier deadline for responding.
So that would be 180 people. But yeah, I guess if they don't respond with a confirmation,
then we just assume they're not coming. But this helps us out to know how many more people we want to include.
but we don't have a choice about that. We have to accept everyone who applies.
Okay, but you
No,
know,
I'm thinking aloud, Peggy. It's not any kind of comments on what you're saying. I'm just thinking that if because maybe it's easier for people to just say yes if they don't have to do that. And then we might have almost as many people saying yes while they're not actually intending to come. Because there are people who do respond yes to the confirmation, but they don't show up at all. And then there are people that we invite and they submit, that we send the flyer to, that people who get the flyer submit art and then don't respond at all to the confirmation letter.
well, if they don't respond to the confirmation letter, we shouldn't include them.
Right, then they're out of the show. So,
I mean, if they don't respond by the
thinking-
deadline we give them, then we
I'm-
just don't further include them.
I'm
That's all.
thinking we should, well, first of all, do we like that idea of not having to vet people who have, in one way or another, have already been approved by us? Is there anyone who disagrees with that on the committee? Just raise your hand, please, virtual hand. Okay, so everyone likes that idea. So I'm thinking that maybe the letter should just go to the people. John, I don't know if you have these records, but I'm thinking that the idea that they don't have to reapply should just go to the people who've accepted already.
I just wanted to point out something. I'm not trying to push the committee anyway. I just want to bring up that artists may, and they sometimes do, change the type of artwork they submit. So there's the possibility that artists may change the artwork because people may do different types of artwork, may use different types of styles of artwork. So they might want to choose different artwork for the next art show, maybe based on theme for their own, art they want to show. So it may not be the exact same as.
Well, if I may say, I'm not assuming that when we get submission pictures that they're submitting pictures of everything they tend to show anyway. So it's probably just a small sample of what they may show. Some people send us a lot of pictures. Some people have literally sent us one. So I I don't see, we can't count on them just showing us everything they were going to display anyway.
Right. Do you have records, John, of who've submitted and
Yes,
confirmed?
we have the records of those who have submitted artwork and who have been confirmed by the committee. Yes, we keep record of that.
Thank you. So then I'm thinking we just accept the people who've already said yes, in response to the terms that we have, because I think that shows almost a buying into the process. The other people may have submitted and then not like the terms of we ask them to be responsible for their artwork and their financial transactions. Maybe they don't like all of that, so they don't show. Or they don't respond. So maybe we could do that in mid-July for the people who've been vetted and confirmed and have said yes to our letter, even if they don't show up at the art show, because you never know what happens, but they've already said yes. Is that good? If you don't like that idea, please raise your virtual hand. Or you know what, if you do like the idea, I don't want to embarrass anyone. If you do like the idea, raise your virtual hand.
Well, I'm sorry to keep talking, but I think that the wording would be that we would invite them as opposed to you're approved.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We would invite them to reconfirm their acceptance and include the letter, their acceptance of their interest in being in the art show and their acceptance of the terms. That we'll work on the language, but does that satisfy your concern? Okay.
I will keep note of this, of course, and we'll get back to any further updates, of course.
Okay. So we'd send it to artists approved who confirmed as an invite. I'm making notes. Okay. Anyone, so if you approve this or if you like this idea, could you raise your virtual hands, please? Okay. All right, and I do too. So we have a majority of people, and thank you. I guess Addison's not here. Okay. What date? So when do we want to do this? Mid-July?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So that would go out and they would have, John, you work in August, right?
In August, yeah, I'm still here. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, I guess it would be unusual for the city to give board office people a month off, but okay, just checking. So we'll do a mid-July and then a date of acceptance would be August,
3 weeks.
I guess the first week in August, 3 weeks. Okay. Thank you, Sahar. To confirm to say they'd like to be in the show and accept terms. We'll figure out the language. Okay. So then what deadline? We have the Monday after Labor Day for submissions from everyone else. And the rain date we have established is Sunday. I think that was fine. Anything else, Robin? John, could you unmute Robin, please?
Oh, yes, yes. My apologies. I apologize.
Thank you.
My apologies.
Our rain date is October 4th, right? And
I
rain
think
date.
the show is the 4th and the rain date's the 5th.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Did you have a comment?
No, just wanted to confirm because it's on my calendar and I wanted to make sure I had the right date.
Okay. Any other thoughts on the show? Oh, the music. How is the music for everyone? I think we had a really nice variety.
Mhm.
So, I don't know, Sahar, if you want to ask your friend again, if she had a good time. She seemed to be having a good time and it was enjoyable to listen to her. Of course, the kids from JREC, now they may not be able to perform because it may be too close to the beginning of school. That's what I was told, I think last year. So I'm not sure. I'll write to them now while they're still in school.
I think I can ask Sana if you guys, all of you liked her. Um, I think she's she lives here. She's our local neighbor. But I think I'll just have to give her a date way before because she works between Duke and here. She's a gastroenterologist, pediatric gastroenterologist, so goes for research at Duke. I think it should work, but then I think we'll still know better in September because closer to the date, she would have a better idea about her work.
Well, you could give her the date and
I can give her the
I
date.
think the time would have to kind of revolve around the JREC kids if they're able to come, but I'll find out because I'll write to Brooke.
I think only if it's the Saturday, I could give her whatever time you say, and like kind of we can work around it nearer to the date. But I think for a Sunday, her kids go to Islamic school, and I think the time that she came was because she was bringing them back from there. So I think for Sunday, she's kind of limited around the time she was coming in.
Okay, JREC has come at 12 o'clock, I think, on other years, but this year they couldn't come that early on Saturday, so they just stuck to the same time. But again, I'm not sure that they'll be able to come at all. Did you guys like the jazz duo that came later in the afternoon?
I wasn't here.
Okay. Anyone who was? Anyone like it? Okay, well, I thought they were pretty good and they got some swing dancers around them, so we could invite them back and look for, I found them in the subway. So there are plenty of venues in New York to find musicians. I think it was nice. We had a really nice variety, and as usual, JREC really packs them in. They're so energetic and they're fun. but we had a good variety of music, and it was really nice being exposed and hearing the Pakistani music, Sahara, and it was a lot of energy at the end of the show to get two brass instruments with the background of the American standards or swing music. So I think it's good. If anyone has any music ideas, please. You know, we have a lot of time that we could have 5 hours for musicians, and I think it adds this extra dimension because art is visual as well as the musical arts, performing arts. So it's great to have all of that. We'll try and get Chick-fil-A back, and you know, the ice cream and the coffee sellers. If anyone knows anyone else, we'll work on the flyers. The flyers, you know, originally I was a little concerned about the pink, but it was so visible from across the street and down the block on the lamppost that I think it was a great background color. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I got a
loved
lot
it.
of comments on how beautiful it was.
I think it was lovely. I loved it too. Really nice color.
So let's stick with the color. We can modify any language. And you know, if you have any other thoughts, email them around. I think of all of you as essential, all of us together. So please, any thoughts, any concerns, just email them around to everybody. And I have to say that we didn't have a whole lot of board volunteers, so we need to work on that. I think someone sent an email, maybe it was you, Peggy, someone else, about how to try and get more volunteers. You know, and Valerie pushes for it, so I think that's good. And it would be great to have more board turnout at the show. I don't know how to do that, but it would be really, I think, great. It is a huge support for the community and the artists. They are an economic engine for the city, as small as they might be. The arts are. And it's just good to have as large a turnout as possible. Anyway, anyone else? Any other comments on the art show?
I think the photography.
The photography. Thank you, Peggy. You did great photos, and so did your son, Sahar. Thank you all to them. That makes such a difference. It really captures the energy and the variety of goods for sale. And John got them posted right away, which I think is terrific. So thank you, everyone, for doing that. I hope we could count on you again, Peggy, in the fall, and your son again, Sahar. Fahad was
I think
terrific
so.
at that. He was energetic. Maybe Sarah and Bella will be back to help set up. But I think the setup was pretty smooth. We could talk closer to the show about whether to mark spaces the day before or just earlier in the morning. I don't think we need to get there at 8:30 again. We could get there at 9 probably to mark the spaces. But I think the 3 lines for checking in worked well. People were up at Third Avenue sending everyone down. The artists got online. You know, some people muttered and groaned a little bit at the check-in, but I think overall it went pretty well. So thank you for that.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, of
Maybe in
course.
the letter, if we can, I know it's written, we've written it again and again, but maybe making it bold and colored and like you know, underlined and everything under the sun to say you have to come to Third Avenue to check in, because then otherwise people, sorry, the Second Avenue to check in, because otherwise many artists come from Third Avenue. They put their tables up, like, you know, they literally set up, they have some volunteers standing there, they put that up, and then it becomes kind of unfair because they've picked up their slots, and then they send one of their people down there to Second Avenue, but they're literally trickling in from Third Avenue. So I feel like if we just make it that you would have to do that, otherwise that's the rule of CB8, kind of, so that it shows that we're fair and not the people are picking up better places and spots than others. And
Yeah.
we're not having those.
That was an issue
interesting
actually with the
experiences.
check-in, was bringing people to the spots that were in sequence, and they're saying, no, I want this spot or I want this spot. And that woman who came really early and set up all her paintings in the tree pit. And then, you know, John and I were trying to persuade her to take the paintings and get a spot the same way everyone else did, but she was elderly, and trying to help, you know, people with different needs and different interests. So if you want to take a crack at that letter, Sahar, and underline and bold it and change the language, you probably have it. If not, you could ask John to send you that most recent confirmation
Please do,
letter.
John.
It up, you know, the way you'd like to see it, and send it around. You know, that would be great if you want to do that.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I feel like the wordings are all there. It's just making it bright and then
Sure.
making it underline and making it maybe bold. which sounds as sometimes a little rude when you're sending an email in that format, but I think it just creates that clarity that we really mean it when we're saying, please come to that, because we want to be fair. But yeah, sure, John, why don't you send it whenever and I can try a little bit of a tweak here and there, because I think it was a perfect letter. Yeah.
John, would you just send Sahar the confirmation letter that goes out to the artist, please? Thank you. Okay, then any old business? Well, any other comments on the show or anything that we're doing, Peggy?
Yeah, I see in the chat the proposed resolution. I just wanted to add a thought to it. As we know, Donald Trump is sort of very America first. And if we want to put something that might be useful in addition to what's there, that among the reasons that we're advocating for more arts funding or to preserve arts funding is to maintain U.S. preeminence in the arts or something like that. Might give our elected officials a little more ammunition.
That's a
in
good point.
Stay
Sure.
competitive. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's really useful. And we are, France might disagree, but we do have a prominent standing. So thank you.
Even if it's not true, we just say it anyway
Well,
because
but I actually read that the Met has more art objects than the Louvre.
Mm.
The
yeah,
Met,
Oh, really?
the Met has stuff buried in basements
Hmm.
going down, 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 and can set up 3 or 4 more world-class museums.
Yeah.
We
So
have more modern art than MoMA.
wow.
yeah.
Their
Yeah,
archive work is very extensive. It's actually really cool, honestly.
yeah, it
Yes.
is. I was
Yes.
surprised. And that, just as an aside, I went for a few minutes to I didn't go in because the line was astonishingly long, but when they opened the Rockefeller thing that first Saturday, they had food vendors from the Queen's Night Market. They had people with Aztec cuisine and Hawaiian cuisine, and I think some kind of East Asian. And I had 3 different, and Peru. It was just an amazing thing. I had 3 different things, couldn't stop eating. And they had a mariachi band on the steps, a big one. And then they had drummers, and the line went all the way down from the entrance on the steps. It went all the way down to 84th Street and came back to 83rd Street of people. And that was just on that end. The southern end, I'm sure, had an equally long line. And that was where the food guys were, so that's where I was. It was just really astonishing. So that made quite a splash. And it was a fun thing that they were doing. It was because we had a rain date that I was able to go over there. So it was a fun thing. And it is just wonderful to have that in our midst and to support and the ability to transcend politics or transcend differences and have the posh galleries on Madison Avenue all the way to the arts through NYCHA or small individual artists and the people who come to the show, the big ones, small ones, and have the community come out and have these museums. It's so fortunate that we have all of this access in our community. So you guys are all a part of this. I mean, you contribute to the betterment of the quality of life for so many by doing this. So I do have to say again, it's the only non-contentious thing that we do. And yet it makes such a difference, I think, to people to have this. And so, my heart goes out to everybody and to thank you enormously for working on this with the community. So again, it's all of us together. Thank you. And thanks to the public who came and gave us your thoughts, although they've left, most of them. Anyway, I won't talk anymore, although I do have a predilection for talking to, I shouldn't even say that publicly. So thank you guys for being here, and I will see you soon. So we have all our dates. Any comments, concerns, email me, you know where I am. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I hope all of you will join us tomorrow night for
Yes.
our forum on Social Security. So we look forward to seeing you then.
Good. Great plug. Thank you, guys.
You're a great PR person.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, see you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, John.
Bye, John.